Hello, and welcome back to No Sense to Nonsense. I am Bridget Washington, and this is the podcast where we focus on those things that just makes no sense to us. Those things that make you want to scratch your head and ask why. But before we go on, I wanted to apologize for the technical difficulties that I had experienced yesterday and therefore was unable to put the podcast up as promised. But here we are today. Let's recap. We talked about the young farmer who had inherited his father's farm and everything that was on it. This farm was on the countryside, and the young man goes into the barnhouse and he sees all these seeds, and he decides to go to the city and plant his seeds. Without much thought, he goes around and he drops the seeds wherever his feet would land. He drops them on the sidewalks, in the streets, in the alleys, on the playgrounds, just dropping seeds. But then he decides that the city is not where he wanted to stay, and he goes back to the country, not understanding and realizing that those seeds would take root. The problem is, as the seeds grew, they did not grow into their fullest potential. Some of the leaves were wilted. Some of the stems had bent. And the reason why was because they did not receive the nutrients, the love, the care that they needed in order to grow into their full potential. Were they a rose? Were they a daffodil? What were they? Did they receive enough sunlight? Did they receive enough rain or water? Who would know if there was nobody there to make sure that they had all that they needed in order to become all that they were supposed to become? And we said this was symbolic of a lot of our young men who have released their seeds and just left. And we wonder why we have so many young men angry and confused about who they are and what they can do, getting involved in activities that would lead them possibly into being incarcerated or possibly dead. Why is this? Is it because there's no one or their fathers weren't there to support them, to love them, to guide them, to instruct them, to discipline them, to push them forward, to be their greatest coach? So now they're walking around just with no clue of all that they can be or become, because it takes a father and it takes a mother, which means a balance. One imparts, one nurtures. So today we're going to even go a little further and ask, what what had you released in your seed? Because you produce what you are. Where were you at that time in your life when you released the seed? Were you happy? Were you joyful? Were you going after your dreams and aspirations? Did you have entrepreneurship in you? Or were you angry and frustrated and lonely and depressed and just hopeless? Because if those are the things that you had, the latter things, when you produce that seed, that's what you're going to get as a result. And especially if once you produce the seed, once you release the seed, then you leave off with that child, with all those feelings and with all those emotions, not understanding where they came from or how they got there, but they're there and there's nobody to guide them. Did we ever think about that before we had children? Where am I at in my life? Should I produce another human being? And I'll be honest, not many of us thought about it because we're in our emotions, we're in our feelings, we're in our romantic thoughts or whatever. So we're not thinking about the long term outcome. And how do we do that? How do you do that? How do you produce something great if you don't know that, if you don't know who you are? You got to do some introspection of yourself. And I would tell you there's three things that you can count on that belongs to you and it identifies you. One, we were created in the image of God. We were created in the Abba God. We were created in the great I am, who created every living thing. Just think about that. So when anyone tells you that there's nothing to you, you're nobody, you know, even with your offspring, you can go back and say to them, you know, we were created in the image of God. That makes us somebody. We were created by the Abba God who's able to do all things but fail. We were created in his image. So in him, we can do great things. Next, the word says that we were fearfully and wonderfully made, which means everything about us and our making was intentional, precise, and with divine thoughts. God knew just what he wanted in our human bodies. He wasn't confused. He put our eyes in front of our face so that we can keep our eyes forward and keep looking for possibilities, keep looking up to him, keep looking for our future. He put our brains in the top of our head so that our brains can signal our heart to pump blood through our veins so that our body could run according to the way that God created it. So that our kidneys and our lungs and every other functioning of our body, organs of our body would function the way that he created it, fearfully and wonderfully. He had the shoulders connected to the torso and the shoulders connected to the arm and the arm connected to the wrist and the wrist connected to the fingers so that we could use our hands and be mobile. He didn't put our hands in the middle of our elbows. He was exact. So again, you and I and we were fearfully and wonderfully made. And finally, the thing that you find a lot of people searching for, a lot of our young people searching for, is love. I want to be loved. I want to know that somebody cares about me. And all you have to do is look in John 3:16 that says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son." It was his only begotten son that he gave for us, that he allowed to be sacrificed for us. A man who knew no sin, but took on the sin of the sinful so that we can have the opportunity to have eternal life with God, so that we can have the opportunity to live an abundant life on this earth. So you are loved. Don't let the enemy tell you, don't let people tell you because you're not a certain color, you don't have a certain type of income, or that you don't live in a certain type of place, that you're not loved, you're beneath. That's a lie. Let's just remember that we want to produce and we want to birth the great things that's in us. And what we have is the love of God and the belief that we are somebody, excuse me, because we were fearfully and wonderfully made and we are loved. Until next time, this is Bridget Washington from No Sense to Nonsense. Bye bye.